So we almost have a complete game. The main issue is that when I press play and when I move my character off the screen, it's going to fall forever. And that's not the best user experience in my mind. Although it can be funny, it's not the best. So we should have some method to respawn the ball when it falls off the platform or when it falls off your level. So to do this, there's a really nice way we can handle it. So first off, the way we're going to sort of handle this is I'm going to go in here, click Create, make a 3D object, and then just grab a cube. It'll pop up a cube for me. And I actually sort of want it to be at the origin, so a nice little handy tool is up here. We have this little cog. If you click on it, you can go reset position, or just reset. Boom, and it's back at the origin. That's great, because you need like spawning in random places for some reason. So now I'm going to drag it down a little bit, drag it well below the level so that I know I don't catch anyone. Then press R for scale and just drag it out, just start scaling it a lot. I might just type it in actually, go over to Z, 100, X, 100, cool. And now we have a big white plane, or big white cube. And if I fall off, I'll bounce on it. So this is a partial solution, but I don't think it's the best. So we want to go ahead and take that whenever the ball falls and hits the area that big white cube is underneath it, we want to spawn it back up to whatever spawn point we set. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is going to be the final required scripting part of the workshop, and we'll go over some more optional parts later if you want to follow along. Cool. So let's create another script, and we're going to right-click, create C# script, then call it teleport zone. That sounds pretty good to me. I'm not sure what I call it on the asset. It's something teleport zone. That works for me. Call it whatever you like. So we have start and update here. I actually don't want either of those, so I'm just going to delete them. There's a handy function we're going to use, and you'll sort of just have to follow what I'm saying. This is stuff that's defined by Unity, so we're not coming up with these names, but it's void space on trigger enter, and then you're going to do an open parentheses, type in collider, and then I'm going to call it other, and then put in a curly brace and a closing curly brace. I put one in for me, but that should be what your function looks like. So quick explanation of what this does. There are two types of colliders within Unity. So typically what we've been seeing up until this point is that when our object hits something like the ground, it bounces off of it. That's what we would expect to happen. It's pretty normal. However, sometimes you just want to detect if something has come into it, and when we do that, it's called a trigger as compared to just normal collider. So a trigger collider. So in this case, what I want to do is I just want to detect if the ball has gone down and hit that sort of kill zone, and then respawn it back up to the top. So we're going to use on trigger enter. This is going to get called, so if we have our cube right here from the side, and our ball's falling into it, coming down, right when the ball hits this edge, so right when it comes right in here, this one is going to get called. And it's going to get called saying like, oh, something has come inside of my trigger volume. You should do something about it. So in this case, it's going to do that on trigger enter, and it's going to have collider other. So that collider other is going to be sort of like this ball right here. There is a collider component attached because it has to have one in order to interact with the physics engine. So it's going to pass in this guy's collider. So this guy has an other on it. And it's going to say like, oh, here's our teleport zone script. That's going to get caught behind it. Teleport zone. It's going to just go, boop. Okay, here you go. You can use it with whatever you want. And it's going to throw it into that, like, it's called a function. It's going to throw it into that function so that we can do stuff with it.
So what is that?
Other is just something I chose to call it. You could call it whatever you want.
So it's referring to the ball.
The collider on the ball. or whatever hits it. But right now it's
And then
default.
on mine, on trigger enter, it says time size. Should I do something wrong?
Is it freaking out or anything?
No, it's just like regular.
If you press Control B, actually, wait, are you on Visual Studio or Mono?
No, not
Okay, try pressing Control B and seeing if it's okay. If it throws an error, there might be an issue. Okay, you're good then. Cool. Okay, so teleport zone. So we have void on trigger enter. So let's just check to make sure it's working. So what we're going to do is you type in debug.log, and then, I don't know, like triggered, I guess? So it's sort of a weird name, but triggered works. And you just type in inside of double quotes, and that'll be what we're going to do. It's up.
Is there a difference between using the capital letter on the first letter of the debug and log?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, so it needs to be capitalized. Cool. So now whenever we do it, we should log out triggered. So let's go back into our game. And we can try and see what happens. So if we do it, nothing's actually going to happen, unfortunately. And there's a reason for this. So if I click on the ground cube, I might just go ahead and rename this respawn zone. You can see we have a box collider on it, which is good, but there's this little is trigger checkbox, and it's not checked. So I want this to be a trigger, so boop, now it's checked, and we're good. And now if I press play, actually, before I do anything, now if we add the component to it, so teleport zone, make sure that your teleport zone script is attached to it. So that means either dragging the teleport zone onto it, onto this, into here, pressing add component, all the ways we added camera follow, add that on to your object on the bottom. If you press play, then move over and drop down, it's going to fall straight through. So right now, Unity isn't registering collisions like before, but if you notice, right here in the bottom, there's a little debug log statement. Oh, you can't see it. Right let me get out. So right here on our console, there's a little triggered statement. So it actually did work. I will switch this actually so it's easier to see. So when I press play and I move over and follow through, boop, it's going to get hit right when we go through it. So that's perfect. It means that what we're doing is getting called and it's working as expected. Great. So I don't need that debug log anymore. We know that it works. So now there's a few things we want to do. So the way that I want to make this teleport zone work is that whenever the ball hits it, I want to teleport the ball to a specific location. So let's go ahead and just make a location like we did before. So public transform, and let's just call it like spawn point, something like that. And this is just something that we'll be able to drag into it later to specify where we want it to land whenever it gets spawned over. Cool. So now what we can do is on trigger enter, we can say other dot transform. So we're going to get the transform component, which if you remember is the position, rotation, and scale of our ball. Then dot position equals spawn point dot position. So it's going to take the position of other, which we know is our ball, and it's going to set it to our spawn point. Any questions on the logic behind that? Golden. Okay. So if we come over, there's a few things we need to do. First off, we do need a spawn point. Yeah. You're good. There is also one that we post on the Facebook group, and you guys can check that one out as well. It's a little more complicated though. Cool. So what we want to do is we want to create a spawn point. So pretty much we just need any object to represent space. So I'm going to use an empty game object like we were doing before. So go up to create, go down to empty, boom, pops that one in, sort of spawn it at a random position. So like I did before, click on this, and just go reset, and it will bring it right back to where we want it. Cool. And I'm going to maybe drag it up in the air a little bit, get a little bit of fall whenever it respawns. I think that'll be cool. Okay, great. And now if we go into our respawn zone, let's call this object spawn point 1. If we go into our respawn zone, I can go into our spawn point and just drag it onto that spawn point that we set when we were writing the script earlier. So if you remember, and if I can drag, so you should have respawn zone set as the transform for your teleport zone script. Cool. So now let's test it out. And press play, and if I fall off, it will not do anything. So that's an interesting one, actually. We'll have to figure that one out. Maybe I dragged respawn zone and not spawn point. Good job, Tyler. Let's see if this one works. Yup. Woo! Okay. A few issues, but they're sort of funny. Main thing, I'll give it to you in a sec.
What is the spawn point? Like,
What is it?
like what? How do you create it?
Create and then empty.
Or just empty?
Yeah. So a few issues. I'm going to get to your guys' question in one sec. Whenever you roll off, you can see that the ball keeps its velocity and keeps flying. It's sort of funny, but it might not be what you necessarily want in your experience. There is a way to fix that. We'll introduce that right after this. And yeah, in general, there could be a few other issues, but it works pretty well. Question?
Oh, you just touched on it. Velocity.
Cool. Okay, cool. So let's handle that velocity. Oh, another issue right now. I'll go over it after this. So what we have to go over and understand before this is that in order for something to move with physics within Unity, it needs to have two things. So first off, usually you want to put a collider on it. So if we click on our roller ball, you can see that it has a sphere collider right here. And we want this because we want it to let the game know, I want it to collide like it's a sphere. And when it bounces on things, act like a sphere. And then you also need, right underneath it, a rigid body. So a rigid body pretty much is what you're saying, I want this to be affected by forces and gravity most of the time. You can also turn off gravity if you want to right here. But usually it's like, I want it to be affected by forces. So if I go and I push it, I want it to move. However, we have like our ground and our floor. Those have colliders on them, but they don't have rigid bodies. So when the ball falls onto the floor doesn't like fall down out underneath it. Like it just sort of stays where it is because it doesn't have any physics on it. It just is a collider. Cool. So now that we know that this ball for sure has a rigid body on it, we are going to get access to that. So unfortunately, this is a little bit ugly looking, but you'll just have to bear with me on this one. So we're going to do other. Actually, let's just type in rigid body, RB. So we're going to make a local variable. So it's only going to exist inside of here. And we are going to store the rigid body of this other that hits our trigger. So we're going to say other dot, let me see if it's here, other dot get component. I'm going to do this angle bracket, rigid body, closed angle bracket, open parentheses, close parentheses. So this looks really ugly, and it's not really intuitive in any way. But pretty much with transform, that's a special Unity object, hence why we can access it really nicely using this transform. But for anything else, so like a script or a rigid body or a collider, we have to use this big get component thing and pass in what we want to get. So we're going to say, take our ball and get the rigid body component and store it right here. So that's what we're doing. So we stored it into RB, standing for rigid body. And then right underneath it, we can just do RB dot sleep. So this isn't the most intuitive function, but or I guess it sort of is. We pretty much just tell the object to sleep. So we say like, stop doing physics for a little bit, and it will just chill until you start doing physics on it again. So if we go back in to our project and we press play, let's see how it works. Pop. And it will just sleep right in midair. And then when I press the button, it'll start moving again. So it's going to sleep right until we push something onto it again. It's like, so there's a few funny things we can do with this. So first off, our respawn zone looks great. It's really bright white. I'm not a big fan of extremely bright white respawn zones. So if we click on it, we can actually go, and it has a few components on it, and one of them is called a mesh renderer. Renderer in computer graphics world stands for draw it to the screen, pretty much. So if we turn it off, just by checking this, it disappears. And now we can't see it, but if I press play and I move over, I'll still respawn just as I was before. So we're taking off the visual component, but all of the physics that was happening before, that still exists and it's still doing the same thing.